right. Welcome to Coach's Corner. Zianni, you are now on the broadcast. How are you?
I'm doing pretty great, man. Thanks for inviting me on the show, man.
No problem. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of Coach's Corner, where we learn how to stun our opponents on solo queue. Here with me is Zianni, a mid-lane menace, here to teach us all about what it takes to take over the mid-lane position. So, Zianni, how's life been, my friend?
Life's been okay. It's been a series of tournaments that have either ended in glorious victory or glorious defeat.
Well, you know what? Tonight on this show, we are going to have a glorious victory as we break down one of your glorious victories in a game that is pretty much as standard solo queue as it gets, considering it is a sloppy, horrible mess. And we will be breaking down exactly what it takes to win those games with the 3 keys over on your left-hand side, with cooldown windows in the trading position, vision control out of rotation, and team fight positioning. So because this is our first show, I'm just going to go over a little bit of how this will work. So Zianni and I will talk back and forth here, go over a little bit of the keys, then we'll jump right into the show, into the replay, where we'll discuss more in-depthly about the do's and don'ts of our keys and what mistakes and gains Zianni makes in the game. And then if we have time at the end of the show, we will take questions from chat. So, let's get started. Let's get started, shall we?
I'm good to go.
All right, so let's jump into the game here. All right, and let's start it up.
All right.
So let me just throw on the volume. All right, so we are on the Rift. We have Zianni playing LeBlanc here on Summoner's Rift against a brand mid. So Zianni, I'm going to have you take it away on some runes and masteries right now.
Alright, so a standard page for LeBlanc is usually AP scaling or scaling CDR, and then you do the normal standard armor or scaling HP depending on your matchup. Magic Pen is usually a 1 for your page, as well as AP Quints. This game I'm going to be running the standard AP scaling with scaling HP, flat Magic Pen, as well as flat AP for Quints. So basically standard stuff. Masteries is going to be 2109. We're going to put 3 points in the sorcery and then get that mana and HP back from minion kills.
Alright, so walk me through this Brand matchup very quickly here. Brand, a character that does a lot of high damage, but has a lot of also very high cooldowns, as opposed to LeBlanc, who sort of has very quick cooldowns, a lot of short bursts of damage. Yeah. Walk me through that very quickly.
So it's a unique matchup in the sense that LeBlanc and Brand both have very good auto-attack animations. A lot of auto-attack trading won't go on in this lane. Brand has very big skill windows since a lot of his stuff requires a lot of cooldown time, but it does have a lot of impact. LeBlanc has a very good mobility strategy where she does a lot of damage and can trade. So early game we're going to look to put down a lot of burst onto him so we can force him to use as many pots as possible. We're going to need to be careful of the F1 jungle.
Alright, so key point number 1, trading. We're going to combine that into Evelyn Jungle this game, as you'll see very quickly. It becomes a pretty big issue. Just right off the bat, you do go for just a nice W poke there with a couple auto attacks. I think what people lack the understanding, especially in lower elos, is how powerful auto attacks can be level 1. I mean, even until level 6+, especially in the mid lane. If you're not taking armor runes, it can just be extremely deadly.
So we mostly want to be careful of the Brand W here, and then W as much as possible whenever the W cooldown is down, so whenever he uses it to farm or push me out of lane. So the most important thing to be careful of is our arcing whenever we're coming up the farm, because we want to stay away from that W range while getting in range to farm. So we see here they use W, I have level 2, I'm going to push him out of the lane right here, and hopefully get as much C as possible before he hits level 2.
Alright, so you're almost level 3, you've been pushing the wave to get that quick level 2. And you're playing against an Evelyn jungle, so I want you to step me through this next part here.
So I've already pushed myself forward trying to get a lot of good trades onto him. I did not expect Evelyn to go in for a level 2 here. I'm going to get caught out here. I'm going to flash. She's going to go for my clone. She's going to cut me off here. So I've already used both of my pots in this lane, which is not what you want to do versus the Brand. So Evelyn's done a good job doing a level 2 gank here, but she's also set behind her own jungle while Warwick is level 3 at this point. So I'm going to waste her time here. She hasn't done red yet, so it looks like my jungler has enough time to do whatever he wants. Looks like she's going to go down to get a ward and spot out if we've done the red or not, while Warwick goes up to his blue.
So now here we are. Your wave is pushing towards Brand. You're low health. You don't have any HP pots, and you have Evelyn jungle here. Tell me why you're up this far right now.
So basically in solo queue, I'm a greedy person. I want to get as much XP and CS as possible. Honestly, I didn't think Evelyn would still be sticking around. This is like 2 minutes straight that she's been here. I'm going to go in for a trade, since I did have a kill window, and then I'm going to get first blooded for that.
So unfortunately, you do die, and Dangerous Games keeps Brand alive. Not a very lucky situation there. You sort of just got caught out by the Evelyn, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty huge deal. Losing that minion wave to tower not only denies you money, but it denies you experience. You obviously are now behind Brand in terms of total gold, as he has an assist. So not a great spot to be in. So what are you looking to do at this point in the game?
So generally at this point, I've already been set behind. My item build is very far behind. He's actually going to pop up here. So what we did do was push Evelyn off the red here. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the lane and push in as much as possible while Brand is missing. Get some XP and CS lead on him. Pretty much do everything I can to get back into the game. This is still a winnable matchup regardless of that first blood. I head up to see if I can help them out here, but ultimately it's pointless. We see that Brand is dead, so I have as much time as possible to deny him this wave, which pretty much puts us back to even for the most part.
So at this point, your wave is pushing. You haven't had any opportunity to harass Brand as he's been out of lane, so you sort of just get some free XP, and now what do you do right now? I mean, there's sort of nothing to do, so what's going through your head?
So I'm going up here to ward, which isn't really a smart idea versus Evelyn. You want to do a lot more than putting wards down on the side lane, because ultimately it's useless. You want to put wards down onto that Wraith camp or Wolves if you have enough time to get down there. Generally you want to spot Evelyn out in the jungle so you can act accordingly. However, I didn't do that, and I put a ward around the scuttle area. So there's not much that ward's going to do for me there.
So let's transition this a little bit. We will see some trading here in a second, but vision control, I mean, obviously we can talk about vision control against Evelyn all day, but just, you know, in general, vision control, you know, you're in a Bronze League, you're in Silver League, whatever it is. Explain to me why one ward or buying a ward every time you go back can dictate the way you play the game in terms of your style, and just you know, defensive wards and offensive wards, and how that plays into how aggressive you can be, sort of that area.
Yeah. A lot of games come down to ward control when it comes to that mid lane, because a lot of the time you're going to have to be defending against not only the jungle, but the bot lane whenever they roam up. So you need to do as much as possible to put yourself in a position where you can save yourself while being a threat to the enemy team. And
the only way to do that is to have vision you know, up and ready. You know, being reactive is a lot worse than being, you know, proactive. So, again, not a whole lot of wards bought this game from you, but hey, it is early, and at the end of the day, you have
the biggest problem that was that I had not very good windows for purchase. I was forced out of lane, so I could only pick up a pod or two, not enough for a ward, along with a core item.
All right, so we've gone ahead and we've died twice here. Let's skip ahead to 9:30. So at this point in the game, let's pause it at 9:30. All right. Actually, let's go to 9:20. My apologies.
All right.
So at this point in the game, you are in sort of a not so great position. You've been set behind.
Died 3 times so far.
Died 3 times. He picked up a nice death at the end of that break there. So, you know, walk me through what's going through your head. You're behind, not a whole lot to do at this point in time. You're just sort of, you know, behind almost in every aspect of the game. Yeah. So I'm at about 9 minutes and 7 seconds here. Yeah, I can skip to you, no problem.
Right.
So you're on your way to bot lane.
Yeah. So the pot process is I just died here in the middle lane. We know that Brand ignites down, Brand ults down. We might actually see him go for the ward, however we skipped a little bit behind that. But I'm going to go bot lane to pick up a gank here. since a lot of bot lane ganks are usually, overextended for the most part, because bot lanes are generally very greedy when it comes to staying in lane for BF sword pickup. So both bot lanes are going to stay here. I'm on my way here. Warwick is on the way as well. Brand's actually backing here, which is good timing. So I'm going to arrive here after my supports up and killing wards. So their bot lane is overextended. We pick up the 6, and we get a ward kill onto the Braum as well as Lucian. The biggest thing is that I pick up kill here on the Lucian, which gives me a big break when it comes to that gold disparity from the mid lane.
And I think another big thing to note here, as I think you pick up this kill as well, is that your lane was also pushing, so you weren't losing minions to tower. This was sort of just your time to come down and roam, and your team, as well as yourself, did a great job at just picking up kills, playing as a team, as you missed your
Brand
skill
gonna
shots.
overextend here, yeah. Well, we're gonna pick up a kill on the Brand, move on to Evelyn, miss everything for the most part. Very tricky to get skill shot onto a very fast target.
So you guys are going to do a bit of trading here. And now you're 1 and 3 and 1. You're a little bit behind on CS, although that kill definitely helps you get back into the game. What are your next moves right here? You haven't completed your core item yet, or even an item yet. You're LeBlanc. You want to be in and out. You want to be doing a lot of damage quickly. What are you thinking? Go back, complete my item, or?
Well, for the most part, I do want to get as many items as possible because that has a lot to do with my AP scalings on my spells. LeBlanc is generally a very big nuking target. I want to get as much gold as possible on items so that I can influence that. I'm going to stick around a bit too much and then pick it picked up here.
So you just saw the Evelyn dive a little bit too deep. Some classic solo queue play there. Just some sloppy mishaps. Both of you thought you could get the kill. Turns out Evelyn, Zianni had the upper hand, and he knew it all along. So now you are 2 and 3.
Yeah, so I'm effectively back in the game. The gold disparity between me and Brand isn't that much. He also went Giant Spell, so he has more survivability, but he not as much trade. The biggest thing to note here on this bank is that I have enough money for a pink ward. So the biggest thing you want to do with that pink ward after getting back into the game, enough to afford one, is that you want to play more aggressively now that you have that gold disparity down to a minimum. So LeBlanc, Brand, very good trades. Pretty much just want to put as much pressure on the map as possible here with that pink ward.
And we can see you are about only 150 gold behind. That's not that much at this point. You're almost even on CS. And as you were saying, Brand opting for that Giant Spell, a little bit more defensive, more survivability. And at this point, you can probably end up trading with him pretty well. Good gank from Warwick here. Gonna pick up that kill. Yeah. But unfortunately, that Evelyn...
Not as lucky as
Not as lucky.
Yeah.
So, where are you planning on using this pink ward? What would you say is an offensive pink warding placement? Now that you are back in the game, you have some money in your belt, you're looking to make some plays. Where do you put that pink ward?
The ideal pink is usually going to be in that top side bush for red, or your red. Normally you can do it in the pink bush, but I'm going to put it on the side lane because a lot of times I'm going to want to open gank routes for my own jungler. So we're going to put that into the side bush so that we can clear out the wards there for Warwick in the future.
That insane Fiora HP right there, bringing it back to full HP. So, again, warding, opening up the map, giving yourself opportunities to pick people. You are playing LeBlanc, that is, a champion that obviously an assassin looking for opportunities, and it's a lot easier to look for opportunities when you can actually see the targets you're trying to kill. So right here, just again, some more trading. At this point in the game, your team is up 6 kills. You guys are up some gold. You're down a little CS, but at the end of the day, you're LeBlanc. You can do damage as long as
no man ever inspired fear into the enemy by out CSing him by 50.
This is true.
Unless it's LCS.
So at this point, just a lot more trading, a lot more farming, sort of a mid-game, an early to mid-game lull. But as we approach 15 minutes here, we're going to see sort of another fight break out. Do you want to just prep that fight and some of the key aspects that go into that fight?
Sure, you want to skip the 15 minutes?
Sure, let's do it. Alright, so I'm at 15-4 right now. Are you ready?
Alright, yeah. So we've pretty much spotted out the dragon. We have vision onto that. I'm on my way there. I've completed my themes. I have that first tier boot. Very impressive for myself. Janna gonna push them off to the side. We're gonna see a Gnar teleport coming in that way. Looks like Braum and the Lucian will be trading onto that Janna, however, she's gonna actually get away from the concussive blow. The Dragon's been delayed a little bit. Looks like Ashe is gonna get caught out here. I'm gonna go in and throw out some chains. 2 chains, miss 1. W out. The nice Janna disengage here gives us some time to regroup as a team if you are pushing in that top tower, which means that she'll be denying that Gnar even more CS than he already is.
Exactly. So you got Fiora pushing top,
Yeah.
denying CS. You guys are doing a pretty decent job at denying them Dragon right now. You know.
Warwick at full HP, which is very good for us. They're all at half. Some of them have at least no mana. Gnar is already in the Mega Gnar, so if they can't actually engage here, then they lose a lot of potential here.
This is not only a good spot for you, but a good spot for your team. But I would say this is sort of LeBlanc heaven. Everybody at half HP, no hard CC after LeBlanc, or I mean, sorry, after Gnar. Goes back to Mini Gnar, and you guys do end up picking up this Dragon. Now, something that I think is pretty smart here, you go back to mid lane. Your team continues to sort of chase and fight. However, you guys not only won the fight, got some kills, but also got Dragon. So by you coming here in the mid lane and just taking down this mid tower, what does that do for you? Because there's a couple key things. Obviously gold, but.
So after we cleared up that Dragon, there was not much point in continuing the chase. We didn't really have as much vision as we could have in that area. But Fiora continues the chase. I'm going to rotate mid. We've already picked up the Dragon. What this is going to do for me personally is I'm going to get 300 gold in local gold, which also gives me a huge lead, as well as denying Brand even more CS, which is usually a good thing to do. And the most important thing about taking the mid tower is that you open up a lot of land in the middle of the map, which means you can push further wards and push further up, gain more control of the map.
Yeah, and I think that's also something in just lower elos that people, underestimate is, a kill, chasing for that extra kill and then wasting that time that you had to potentially take the tower, that not only gives you gold but opens up the map, or, that potentially 300 gold that you get from a champion. You sort of have to weigh the odds, because at the same time, opening up that map, especially when you come to late game, mid to late game, and that Baron starts to be an option and Dragons start to be extremely important. If you don't have mid lane down, or if you don't have at least the outer tier turrets down, that's going to cause a huge, hindrance, especially in vision as well, because it's hard to get past where you don't have towers. So.
And a lot of people underestimate that local gold. As long as a team starts to rotate around the map, that you can get a huge amount of gold for your team in a short amount of time, and also open up a lot of land. So generally, after you take that bottom tower, first one, or the mid tower, you want to start rotating around the map and just picking up more towers for your team, open up more land so they can push further into the enemy side of the map,
and
which secures objectives for the most part.
I mean, I play a lot of solo queue as well, and I can't tell you how many times we've been even in kills, maybe like 2-2, but at 20 minutes they have all of our outers, we don't have a single turret, and now they're pushing into our inner turrets, and we can't even fight them because they have just such a gold lead on us, and that has nothing to do with kills. That's just about better rotations, getting those towers down, opening up the map. We can't leave our base because we don't have wards, because they opened up the map and got into our, our side of the map. So again, just super important to make sure to go for those objectives when you have the chance, instead of maybe that extra kill.
You can also tell that this is a relatively middle of the pack diamond game, because nobody's upgraded their trinket.
Also, astonishing farm on all of you guys, I want to say.
Just absolutely fantastic
job. And that's why I kind of like this game, is because it's just so solo queue. This is a diamond level game, and you have 88 CS at 19 minutes. Kind of funny, but at the same time, you've done what you've needed to do. You were behind, you got yourself back in the game, you picked up a few kills, you're even right now, and you guys have been playing as a team, rotating, getting towers, and now look, you're ahead. So at the end of the day, I guess, you don't need a CS to win games, right?
Yeah, well, you do for the most part, but it's not as important as playing as a team and picking up objectives.
Exactly.
Objectives can vouch for a lot of minions that you missed for the most part.
Absolutely. So talk to me a little bit now about just, we're heading into that 20 minutes. This game actually doesn't go too much longer as you guys start to snowball pretty hard. Just talk to me though, as LeBlanc, as a mid laner. Every mid laner's a lot different. So let's talk about an assassin mid laner. What sort of positioning are you looking to do? And I think that also translates pretty hard into ward coverage as well, as we talked about earlier. But you know,
seeing me get caught out here for not having proper vision control, yeah.
Exactly. As I talk about it.
Yeah. Fiora cleaning up the fight perfectly. You know, the most broken champion in the game right now. But so initially, as LeBlanc, what you kind of want to do is you want to stay on the outskirts of the fight, wait for CC to be used before initiating onto squishier targets or just nuking people in general. LeBlanc has a very unique role that she has tons of mobility and tons of damage, while at the same time keeping a very versatile spot in the meta. So generally, you're going to want to stay on the side of the fight using chains to lock down targets while putting in QWs to lower targets' HPs. Priority targets are generally going to be the Lucian or the Brand, although Brand does have a Rylai's, it's not enough.
So, talk to me a little bit too about, you know, at this point you're not super fed, but you could definitely...
Luden's core pickup is a very important one right here.
Exactly.
It gives me a lot of mobility and damage.
And a big, big power spike in terms of damage. So, tell me how you're trying to play this, because I think the problem that a lot of us players get into is we have this power spike, we want to start to use it, and then we sort of go overboard in trying to do something with it. You know, talk to me about playing like reserved but smart, because here you do go in for that trade. Yeah, you do get in that trade. You know, he uses his ult, you're alive, but you know, you could have gone a lot harder, and that Gnar probably would have killed you.
Yeah.
So just talk to me a little bit about being reserved, and even though you know that you're ahead.
So normally for a player that is usually, let's say, doing average in a certain game, a lot of time you want to make big plays that will usually put you behind because you're trying too hard to make something happen, and you'll overextend trying to get that kind of stuff off. If you miss your skill shots, I think it's about time to back up. Because there I missed half of my damage, and that's something you want to avoid. So you're just going to back out, wait for your cooldowns to come back up. Regardless, we're going to bait them into a bad position. We're going to pick up 3 kills here around the map.
So as this replay starts to wind to an end here, you'll see, again, just one of the more traditional solo queue games you'll see in terms of just sloppy, crazy fights everywhere, deaths everywhere, not a whole lot of farming. Is this, you know, explain to me, this is
I mean, if you take a look at the map right now, yeah, it is diamond level play. If you look around the map, you've got around 6 wards in the enemy jungle. You can see whenever they're coming down to harass Fiora, which is what she wants. She wants to solo that Lucian as much as possible because you know what, he's free. So she's going to pick him up in the bottom. We have vision control on that top side. We have vision control on the bottom side. There's not much they can do. If they want to farm that jungle, they're going to get interrupted by one of us. So for the most part, we want to keep those lanes pushed. Then we want to keep clearing wards to deny the enemy vision and control.
So going off of that, as it just expires, you had a deep ward in the red, you have wards here on the top side, you had wards in your own jungle as well as on the perimeter around Dragon. How important is it to just choke your opponent out in terms of vision control? Because that can just...
So generally it'll depend on the match, because a lot of times if you have pick potential like LeBlanc, you want to deny as much vision as possible so you can camp those bushes like Fnatic would. So that's generally what you want to do. Whenever you're playing Assassin, if you have shadows on the place, you want to use that. So you're going to clear vision, and you're going to utilize that vision to gain advantage on the enemy by catching them out of position.
And honestly, right here, you guys have vision, you come in, you, what is it, 2v5, 2v4 outplay?
2v4.
2v4, and that signals to the other team that this game just isn't worth playing anymore.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Pretty standard, crazy, stupid solo queue game. However, with, you know, even with being behind in the early game, even with you know, getting ganked over and over again by Evelynn, all these things, you still managed to come back, not only be relevant, but end with, I think you were 8-5. You know, let's step through those keys of the game one more time and just sort of let's go back to those points, just talk about those points in which each one of those keys came in to be a factor of how you got back into that game.
So as we all know, the keys for this game, or the theme, was trading, rotation, and positioning. Trading is usually in the laning phase of the game. Trading usually incorporates cooldown windows and abusing that sort of thing. So, for example, whenever Brand uses his W, that's a 9 or 10-second cooldown, where you have a window to harass him for free without him damaging you back. As LeBlanc, you can take that opportunity to either push him away from the lane and deny him CS, or get in damage if he wants to get CS. So that's the sort of window you want to abuse. Trading can also incorporate doing auto attacks and dodging, that sort of thing. In general, trading has a lot of things to do with mechanics, which are stuff you can easily train. But that's usually in the lane phase. When it comes down to cooldown windows, that's usually going to incorporate the later phase of the game when you're counting cooldowns for ults and summoner spells whenever you're doing team fights.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, just mana conservation too, knowing when your opponent doesn't have the mana to either retaliate or when they have enough mana to, you know, ult you or whatever. You know, you got to make sure that you have the mana you need or that they don't have the mana they need as well.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about vision control. Let's talk about rotating around the map. You know, I think we talked about it a good amount in the actual video, but let's just conclude that.
So for vision control and rotations, the general thing you want to know is that for an Evelynn matchup, you're going to want to put wards down on her camp so you can see where you are, where she is, so you can respond to that. Generally, that game, we didn't do much vision control when it came to their camps until later in the game when we had to step into the game since we were a little bit down in the early phases. So vision control and rotations generally come down to counter-ganking the Evelynn or either pushing around the map to catch out enemies who have overextended and overstepped their bounds. So what got me back in the game was the bot lane being over aggressive because they had that Brand who had just came down earlier to push them, their tower, and towards theirs. So that gave them a lot of presence that they didn't have before, so they thought they could stay. And then I came down as well, and we caught them out for free because they had overstayed their welcome.
And just like that, you know, just that little surge of gold, too, helps you just to come right back into that game. So especially if you're on that other team, just, you know, making sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen either through ward control or just not being that aggressive at that time. You know, those little things, that was a very key defining moment of that game. Because had you not gotten anything there, had you even died, had your teammates died, I mean, that could have been the game right there. I don't think you really could have gotten back into it unless, again, some other sort of play like that had occurred. So, you know, just be, I think, cognizant of the fact that when you're ahead and when you're behind, you know, one death or one little play here and there can really shift the momentum of a game. So before we get into the last key, which is team fighting and positioning. If you guys have any questions in chat, feel free to start spamming away now. If not, after this, we will conclude after a short message. So yeah, let's go ahead and last key point, team fighting positioning. I know it's a little bit more dependent on what champion you're playing, but this match, obviously, as you were saying.
For the standard, assassin. I'm going to say a lot of assassins or pivotal stuff like Orianna, Azir. Positioning in team fights is very dependent on your champion. As we're saying, we're going to go more aggressive carry style. So positioning in team fights is going to widely dictate on the area you're fighting as well as the vision that you already have there. If you're playing something like LeBlanc, you want to be on the outskirts looking to get damage in or, you know, kiting with your damage as much as possible to blow up carries or tanks who have overextended onto your front line. Other than that, if you're playing a different style champion, you want to use vision control to find out where the enemy is and then play around that. So say dragon fights, a very common area for team fights. You generally want to have your entire team on one side of the dragon instead of splitting up on both sides. A lot of times the AD carry and support will run in through the bottom and then you've got the other side coming in through the top. They'll split and then they'll just rush onto one side since they've already compacted into the middle of that dragon. So for most part, positioning as a mid laner, you don't want to die instantly in these fights because you're a very good source of AP damage, not as much for anyone else on your team. You're very important to your team because you have a lot of playmaking potential with your kit. So in general, if you want to lead your team, you got to do it by either putting down wards or by getting picks by playmaking. As LeBlanc,
I'm going to put you on record for saying if you want to lead your team, it's about putting down wards, man. I mean, I guarantee you, I think I moved up an entire tier just because I went back and bought wards for the first like 5 backs. I just made it, as long as I had 75 gold, and it's just amazing how much because it helps everybody on your team, not just you.
So the most important thing about warding for your own lane is that you make yourself an impenetrable fortress. You can waste a lot of time of the jungler by just having wards down there and then baiting them into your lane further. But when you put wards down, you open up a lot of gank routes for your own jungler while denying the enemy vision. And it also keeps you very relatively safe while keeping your friends safe. So for instance, mid lane, you have the basically central side of the map. If you ward your red entrance, you're covering either your top or your bottom side at the same time as your mid lane and your jungle. That is 3 lanes that you're basically defending for free by putting down 1 ward, and that way you can rotate on the enemy if they try and go through that ward to go down on your bot lane or your jungle.
Alright, so let's see, do we have any questions from chat?
Yeah.
How long have you been playing, Zianni?
I've started playing near the 2nd season, so season 2012, late season 2012. I think I was a Carve This Revive Teleport main at that time.
Okay. I only know one other player who made that popular, Phantom Lord, but
yeah.
Are you Phantom Lord? I guess would be the better question.
Have you ever seen him and me in the same room?
I'm not going to answer that. Too scary.
All right.
So, next question. If your team is not good and your support, how can you carry?
So, as a support, it is possible. It requires either 2 things. Depending on what kind of support you're playing, if you're playing something tanky like Thresh, Alistar, Leona, you can start by either initiating plays for your team when the enemy is out of position. So that also has to do a little bit with ward control, knowing when the enemy is not there to counter on your initiations. So for the most part, when you're a support, usually most games, and let's say mid, high, diamond, will usually end with a Thresh catching an enemy player out because of their mistakes. So supports usually have a lot of playmaking potential. You have a lot of CC in your kit. You have a lot of vision control. You basically run the map. That's usually how support works.
So,
if your bot lane's losing, another thing you can do is just roam mid lane, lock up their mid lane, toss them towards your mid lane, and get a kill for free.
So there you go. I heard roam mid, ward up, late game hooks. So only play supports that have hooks. So you. So here's a question. How to get out of Diamond 5? I've been stuck there for a year as a jungler.
Alright, so jungling is very specific. I think jungle is a very important role in solo queue right now because usually games are dictated by jungling. There's usually 2 things you can do by being a jungler that'll basically secure your game or at least not make it a misery for everybody there. First one is, if you're playing something aggressive like Nidalee or Evelynn, you're more than welcome to invade the enemy second or first buff because, let's be honest, no solo lane's going to put enough time to actually rotate there.
Because this is a solo queue, after all.
Yeah. So a lot of time, you'll usually pick up a kill because an enemy jungler will have low HP from running aggressive rune style. If not, you'll still pick up the buff and it'll be free, and you'll set them behind, as well as secure yourself pretty much more XP than the jungler. Second, if you're not an aggressive jungler, please do not let yourself get invaded by an enemy jungler. You're going to want to put either a ward on your red entrance or your blue entrance, just whatever you want. Just don't make it easy for the enemy jungler to invade you and set you behind for the rest of the game.
And if you do die, make sure to blame the other lanes for not rotating, because it is absolutely their fault.
Yeah. And then, okay, so after that, that's basically the 2 important keys to not losing the early game. After that, it's basically seeing the windows that you have opportunities to gank in. So for, say, Devour junglers, you're just going to do whatever you want. You're going to farm for the most part. Once you get either recurve bow or finish entire item, you can usually do dragon on most champions. Not most, but most champions. If not, and you're doing more of a warrior rune glaive enchantment, you have a lot of pressure, so you want to do a roundabout ganks in the mid lane or top lane. Bot lane is a little harder to gank, but depending on what kind of ward control your bot lane has, you can go in for the river or come in for the lane if they're playing very aggressively. So in D5, I see the pretty much normal thing is to get invaded or invade the enemy jungler. That's the big thing right there, so that's what I want you to put focus on. But the most second important thing is securing dragons. And then third is, please, if you're doing a very aggressive build like Warrior or Runeglaive, you want to be having a presence in the middle lane, even if it's just coming around once or twice. That makes a lot of effect on enemy jungler. See, the last game where I was playing LeBlanc, there was a lot of pressure put on me, and I had to play very passively, which gave Brand a lot of room. So even if you don't get anything off in the mid lane, you can still come around once or twice, see what you can do, and then move on to another lane. Top lane is usually free because a lot of people are playing more aggressive, like top lanes like Fizz, Gangplank. Usually easy to gank as long as they're going aggressive.
So, okay. So here's a good question. Is there ever a situation in the mid lane, if you're losing really badly, to allow the enemy to take the tower early?
Yeah.
This person says, I've heard it before, but I'm curious.
If you're basically getting tower dive for the most part, usually you can give up your tower. So a lot of times, mid lane, you can get bullied a lot if you get first blooded or a jungler gank puts you behind by taking your flash and giving the enemy mid laner first blood. Giving up your mid tower does lose a lot of pressure for the jungle and the dragon, and you also can't roam as well. But it'll give you room to farm because you've got more space to back up to.
And they're also invading harder into your territory, easier to collapse on.
Yeah.
Cool. Any last questions? I'll humor this one. How hasn't LeBlanc been nerfed yet?
LeBlanc actually has been nerfed twice or three times in the last couple patches. They reduced the move speed on her W, so it's slower. I think they nerfed I think it was the E.
They nerfed her ult ratio, I think?
Yeah. Yeah, they nerfed the ult ratio, and then they nerfed the whiff on the E, I think.
And I guess since this goes into the same category, is it possible to beat Skarner in patch 5.16?
Nope, impossible.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a good question. Let's take 2 more questions,
Alright.
if there are 2 more good
So let's go back to a previous question. Popstar Sonic Pie says, I'm aggressive jungler, Eve and Xin Zhao. Both are very strong junglers in the meta right now. So the most important thing about playing Evelynn and Xin Zhao is using your pressure properly. Evelynn has a lot of gank routes available. You can either invade the enemy jungle and pick up a kill onto them if they're low, or you can use that pressure to pressure the bot lane, mid lane, top lane, depending on how your style is. So generally, you want to open windows up for Dragon by either taking out the bottom lane or by allowing the mid lane to push in that mid tower early. Xin Zhao is generally an all-around all-star for the early mid-game. You've got a lot of dueling potential. So you want to go for a more aggressive playstyle by invading the enemy jungle and catching them out of position. But usually that will require either a good top or mid lane who has a lot of, let's say, roam potential, because a lot of times jungles will play overly aggressive, but their mid lane is something like, let's say, Orianna, and doesn't scale as well in the early game, so you're going to have to wait for her to kick in.
Okay, let's take this question. Can you explain, so let's take one more after this. Can you explain more about when it's important to freeze a lane?
Okay, freezing lane has a very specific role in the game, and that's denying the enemy CS and XP for the most part. Freezing is generally done in the bot lane, top lane, and mid lane. All lanes. It's equally important. Whenever you freeze the lane in middle, the most important thing to remember is that the enemy has to overextend if he wants to get farm or XP, which gives your jungle more room to come around and gank him if he gets over greedy. But the most important thing as well is whenever they're in that sort of position, they're forced into coming up to the wave, which is farther out in the lane, so you can put on a lot of hurt before they can run back to their tower.
And just couple that. So if you are extremely ahead, for instance, you could freeze the lane towards your tower so that they have to come close and then you can all in them. Or if you're extremely behind, you can sort of do the same thing but for the reverse, right?
Yeah. Usually you want to freeze whenever you have a huge wave built up on the enemy side. That way the enemy will be there for a while and you'll deny them a lot more CS and XP. Another time to freeze is in the very start of the game. You can pull out the minion wave to stack onto your first wave. But it's not as effective anymore because a lot of times mid lanes will push out their first mid lane as hard as possible just because they want that level 2.
Alright, wow. Technical difficulties in the last second here.
So I guess in rounding it up, you always want to freeze whenever you're in a position to harass the enemy for free while staying safe. Because whenever you freeze, you're in a safe position to harass the enemy and capitalize on that.
All right, I don't see any more questions. This has been Coach's Corner Episode 1. Thank you, Zianni, for being on the show.
No problem.
Apologize for the technical difficulties. This was our first show. However, please check us out. Go to cc-lol.com. There you can find our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as the stream. It is embedded in our site, so if you feel like watching it from there, go for it. We do plan on doing these shows around twice a week. We have about 5 other solo queue gods on the roster. They play different positions. They get more CS than Zianni's LeBlanc at 20 minutes.
Always.
So, feel free to stop by anytime. We will be posting some things on Reddit, as well as always posting on our Facebook, Twitter, about our upcoming shows. If you have a show request that you'd like to see done, or like a specific theme or whatever, feel free to pop onto our Facebook and, write it down. We can take it into consideration if we have the players to do so. We definitely will. So I guess from here, this has been Coach's Corner, and you have learned how to stun your opponent on solo queue.
Thank you for watching, guys.
Thanks.
Remember, farm better than me.
It's important.
Very important. Remember, the 5th of November.
Chicks dig Elo.
They always dig Elo. Invite your girlfriend to prom.
Thanks for watching.
We love you.